Hi, my name is Michelle Tonamapea, and I'm here to talk about my life through addiction. It's not the easiest thing to talk about, especially for someone who was very shy at one point. I guess I'll start from childhood. You could say I was a shy kid, and you know, shy is an understatement. I was more of an insecure child. I look back at my memories as a child, and I just know I felt like very neglected. And the earliest memories I had was just not very fond. I even look back at pictures and I didn't smile very often. And I think it's just because of the suffering that I had to withstand from my mother. I came from a very abusive household, and it was verbally, mentally, and physically abusive. And I didn't have a voice. So I just remember being shy, being insecure, not having a voice to talk to anyone. But my father, he was the closest person to me, and he tended to guide me and navigate me through my childhood, to try to make it a little bit better, dealing with my mother, because he had to also be abused as well. So when I was younger, quite different now, because I'm able to, you know, actually speak without, and even on camera, it doesn't matter. I used to have like fear of speaking in front of anything that was public or two or more people, or a setting like this, even if it was by myself. So when I grew up, I found out later that my mother was narcissistic. So there was no drug use in the home. There was no alcoholism. I wasn't introduced to anything like that. We were in a pretty strict household, so I wasn't able to see things that other children probably were able to see. I kind of was sheltered. They wanted me to stay away from a lot of they call it temptations of the world. So with that being said, I didn't know a lot of things. You know, I was a smart kid, but I just wasn't aware of what the world had to offer, good and bad. So I went through a lot of anger issues, not off top. I initially started off with sad and depression issues, you know, from maybe 3, 5. And I started showing a little bit more aggression towards my mother, for the physical abuse around 7 or 8. And then 11 and 12, you know, when you're right going into adolescent. So in me expressing my aggression, now I wasn't a disrespectful kid. So, you know, with a narcissistic mother, it could be anything that would trigger them. So I found my place as the scapegoat child, and I would just try to do as many great things as possible so that no one would be upset and she would be in a good mood. And it didn't matter. So when I realized that, almost about 11, 12, I started to rebel a little bit. This kind child that was very shy would, you know, she would be handing me out discipline, you know, in the form of punishments in the form of abuse, and I would lash out and not say anything, but it would be my energy, my eyes, my breathing, you know, just looking at her, just so upset, like I have to deal with this, but I don't think that I like it, you know, and that just drove her crazy. So it wasn't the submissive response that she wanted. So I got it even harder. So then going into almost my 13th birthday, I remember her getting mad, and I was also like the house servant, and you know, being the youngest one. So I just was really tired, you know, for my punishments to be sometimes, you won't be able to go to school, or you won't be able to go to church. That was my only fun. And so I would listen because I would be forced to stay home with her, and I did not want to do that. So I rebelled a lot more, and she got upset because I said, I just want help at home. Can I just have help? Like, I wish I had siblings, you know, my age or something like that. And I just remember her saying, in the most petty way possible, you do have siblings, and I feel the need to tell you that you're adopted. Something to that effect. I'm pretty sure it was way more severe than that. And I remember being so dramatic. I remember screaming, yelling, running out the room. And that was the day that pretty much changed the rest of my life, one of the days. Shortly after, we had a family member move in, And his name was, well, I won't mention his name, but he was my best friend. You know, I finally had a sibling. He was a lot older than me, but he took me everywhere, and my parents were always gone. My mother, she was very social. My dad worked a lot, and I just remember I finally have somebody. You know, everyone was older by 11 years, and just, you know, left me alone. And then one day, that all changed. You know, he ended up taking my innocence, you know, gradually, not right off the bat, but in those moments, I remember not only going through what I went through with my mother, but also with someone I consider my best friend. So it really tainted my image of just the concept of love. And going into my adolescence, it was just a horrible time, finding out I was adopted, also being violated, and not knowing who I was. So I turned to fighting, aggression, releasing that aggression. Everything that I was having to suppress, I released it at school, and it became a problem. I ended up liking getting that aggression out because I couldn't get at home. And I remember one day I was hanging out with my friends, and they're like, you know, you don't drink. I was like, I don't want to drink. Like, just have a drink. Like, well, just, you know, you smoke a blunt. Or at the time they had joints. And I remember hitting the joint, and I just had a smile on my face the whole day. It was something that I hadn't done naturally in a long time. I don't even know if I remember even as a kid. So I ended up liking it, and I didn't really do it too often. The liquor was the thing that I liked. You know, I liked the way it made me lose a little control. I was always so contained and controlled, even when I was out of control. It didn't become a problem, you know. I ended up going through it more with my mother, and I found that every time I would go, you know, go out of the house, I just couldn't have any freedom. And this is, you know, towards 13, 14. And I felt myself rebelling more and just saying, this is enough. I've had the whoopings, I've had, you know, the punishments, like pick one or the other, you know. So I decided just to go out on my own. I didn't have a curfew because I couldn't go out, so I ended up leaving and not coming home because I said, well, they're not gonna let me, you know, come back without getting beat and I'm gonna get punished. I just won't go home. And I didn't know where I was gonna go, but the alternative was, I'm just tired. I wanna have some fun. So I went out, I got really, really drunk. It's the first time I had liquor in that capacity, and I remember loving the way it felt. And it wasn't a problem. You know, I didn't drink like any teenagers would do now, like not on the weekends, not even socially. It wasn't until I went off to college a couple of years later. But before that, in my times of running away, because this happened a lot after that, where I'm gonna get in trouble anyway, I'll just run away. It ended up breaking my dad's heart. You know, he saw his angel, he told me, turn into just this other person. Then he comes to find out that she told me I was adopted. So it created a wedge in their relationship, and I seen that, not knowing what it was, but I just know they slept apart, and it was just an awful time for our family because he was really hurt. He knew and he thought that it was a direct result. My rebellion was, you know, from what she told me. And it started that off, but, you know, there was other factors. And so in my times of rebellion, I ended up getting pregnant at 14. I was a freshman, and I was drunk, and I just thought, I want someone to love me. I don't even care. He ended up wanting to have an abortion, and I said, no way I'm doing that. This is something that I'm making my best friend. You can go, I'm gonna, you know, raise this child. Like you know, at 14, you know, like we're so adventurous then. You know, I ended up changing my life a lot. I went through a lot of changes in my life, ups and downs and tower moments, but this time it was, you know, I went off to school, and, you know, she grew up, and my parents held her for like a year, or actually a semester, and I started at a 4-year university and ended up finishing high school and went against everything my mom said as, you know, when I was growing up. I mean, I became that promiscuous child she thought I was gonna be, because she kind of manifested it, I think. But you know, they said I was gonna drop out, and I ended up going to Cal State Hayward. So My parents held her for a semester so I could get used to it, and then I ended up getting an apartment. That's when I noticed the problem that I had, because the social parties and the drinking, and it was, at first I'd go with coworkers, and maybe 2 years I was able to have a drink and, a little tipsy when I was coming home, but never a problem, never wanted to do it every day, and never where I blacked out. Fast forward, I have a son, my first son. Me and my mother at this point aren't talking, and I just felt like she's not the type of person, if you know any narcissist, that you can have a conversation with about pain, or pain they've afflicted on you. They don't want to hear that. So I just decided that in my silence I would be heard, and I didn't talk to her. So I had my son without them knowing. And in a year they found out, and it made our relationship a little bit better, but of course not so much better because we didn't talk about it. And I just, tried to forgive and forget. But then a year later, I had my youngest son. And this was my dream, to be a mother, to be loved, to be a wife, to be respected, because I had went through so much where I felt like I was disrespected. And drinking wasn't the problem at all at this time. I remember having casual drinks, and, my ex-husband at the time, we were like the picture perfect family. One day, everything just changed. It was like something inside of me felt like I wasn't worthy of this life. And almost like what was said to me when I was younger was resonating and as my truth, like echoes of like a far distant past. So I ended up sabotaging and leaving and falling into a deep depression because I didn't feel like I deserved anything that I had. And remembering that my mom left me, it was like I was triggering myself every time I thought about it. And I didn't feel like I could love these kids. Like, how can I love them when I don't know love? So in my decision, when I started feeling really depressed, I left the kids in the care of my ex-husband. And that sole decision, more so than any decision in my life, it caused me to take on a different approach to drinking. I didn't know what depression was. I didn't heard of it. In our community, it's almost frowned upon to go talk to a stranger or therapy, because it's embarrassing and shaming the family name, and why would you tell your business to complete strangers? So that was unheard of. And I remember talking to my ex-husband and telling him I'm feeling thoughts of suicide, and just this like a dark cloud. And he said, your mom pushed through it, like, get over it, I don't know what you want me to do. And it turned our relationship very sour, where I didn't bridge a gap, I created a gap, because I just felt unworthy more and more. And it made me dive into alcohol a lot more as my crutch, because every time I would feel pain of not having them, and what kind of mother are you, and all those echoes of those words that now are my own, I ended up drinking more to numb all of those feelings. Now what ended up happening throughout the years, and this went on for a total of 10 years, I call it my 10-year blur. And for 10 years of my life, I lost. Not too memorable of a time. I mean, literally, I don't remember a lot of things that happened, and bad things that happened, because I went to the point where I thought I could drink, and I'm taking the drinks and taking shots, and before I knew it, I'd end up somewhere with a stranger, or in a dangerous situation with my doors unlocked in a city I didn't know how I even got there, or in a ditch, getting a DUI, and then getting raped, and not knowing who the person or persons were, and just feeling totally disgusting. I dipped and dabbed in other drugs because it was, a party cocktail when I would socialize, and those drugs were nothing like alcohol. And it's crazy because they were harder than narcotics, and I touched them and I just said, these they don't make me feel like alcohol does. Well, the problem there was when I drank, it numbed what I wanted it to numb, and then eventually, because of so much misuse, it numbed everything about me. So that's why I call it the 10-year blur. I numbed my personality, I numbed my morals, I numbed what I loved about life. It was a dark moment, and my kids lost a mother. I lost myself. My dad lost a daughter, and it was so sad because I remember looking back and I wanted to change. And I remember, okay, I'm gonna be sober. I told myself, and I would be sober, and I didn't need to be around as long as I didn't see it. I'd go months, literally 6 to 8 months, no alcohol, wouldn't go out. And then I'd want to go out one night and my friends are going, and I'm like, you know, most grown adults want to go hang out, and they can if they're responsible drinkers. And I used to be responsible, why can't I now? And I convinced myself just to have one drink and you're gonna be okay. And it was just so disappointing to wake up and the one drink turned into, of course, who knows how many, and everything that I worked hard for again and again and again and again, to the point where no one wanted to be around me anymore. The things that I've done on my addiction was just not anything that I had done before. Not anything that a respectful person would allow people to do to that person. And people would abuse me, and they would hurt me, and I just didn't understand, because I wanted to numb one thing. Why couldn't I numb everything? I mean, why did I have to numb everything? And then I try again. I didn't trust myself anymore, and when you don't trust yourself anymore, you give up. And my dad, he was such a great person in this time where he understood, where everyone said, put the kids first, just take them back. Even in my addiction, even in my depression, just take them, you're a mom, you know, handle that. And he knew, get yourself right first. He believed in me, and I just didn't understand when everybody else told him to leave me alone. You know, it wasn't even his biological, so I didn't understand why he kept on continuously planting these seeds in someone that has like horrible soil at this point, you know, with nothing to even a hope to grow, no faith to grow from. And relationship after relationship, I mean, bad, toxic relationships where I found myself repeating cycles in patterns that I had in my family, where I was dating narcissistic people. And I felt, and I remember saying to myself, well, I deserve this. Whoever is treating me this way, I deserve it, because how do I think my kids feel right now if they're hurt? I don't deserve anyone that's good or decent, because they're hurting, they're suffering, so I'm gonna suffer too. And I did for those whole 10 years. One day, one of my relationships that was very violent ended up getting into a physical altercation. And that was the day that probably saved my life and changed everything about me. I went to go and help defend her, and I ended up using physical force and a weapon, and landed up in jail and taking my first felony strike. And the person I was defending was not there for me. I was totally drunk. I don't remember anything. I remember being in the cell wondering, what did I do? People ask me, I just said I don't want to talk about it. I didn't know what I did. There's a lot of times I didn't know what I did. And I had to hold my head up high, knowing that I probably shouldn't want, you know, after what I did. But I don't know what I did. I just know it wasn't a good feeling when everyone's staring, laughing, or you feel like someone has violated you, or you just don't know. This is a time of my life where, rock bottom, I didn't even know how I hurt someone. Almost killed them. I had no recollection of it. Even in protecting somebody else, it didn't matter. I didn't remember, and I couldn't even fight it. The person I defended did not show up. They took my money, lost the apartment, everything that I owned, and I ended up taking a deal, losing my rights. And I learned, not because of the incarceration itself, that was a horrible thing, but it was the program when I got out. It was a community of women that took this shy person that still had that shy kid in her that was still broken, and pulled and nurtured and cultivated this garden my dad planted these seeds in. It forced me to look at myself as a person and be present, and teach me things like the God of your understanding, because I was so conflicted with the social and religious beliefs that my parents had that were so traditional, and I was told I was different, and I'm adopted, so it was just very hard for me to be who I was. Here, I was who I was. I wasn't shy. I wasn't, I didn't have to drink to have a personality because I thought I was boring. I am weird, and it was okay because that's what people liked about me, is that I was weird. I was loyal, I was quiet, I observed things. I was fun, I was beautiful, and I gained like a sisterhood with these women. And I remember the only thing that really made me change is that the founder of the organization told a story, and I looked at all the leaders, and they were all women who came from the same community as me, similar backgrounds, but way worse circumstances, and against all odds were able to kick crack addictions after and be sober for 20 years and start this program. It took me to look at someone that had her son killed in front of her, and she took that strength and beat something that was so hard to beat and help others do it too. I said, if she could do it, I could do it. And that was the most amazing thing for me to know and hear, because the people that were telling me, you need to change, they didn't have the pain I had. They didn't have the abuse that I had. They were the abusers, or, they weren't violated. And, at the end of the day, no one has your issues, but these people did. And it changed my life. What I was using alcohol, to replace, I just replaced it with what it was originally supposed to be. And it was an easy, transition for me. And everything in my life changed dramatically. I went from this raging alcoholic that could not be trusted, that stole from her own dad, that loved her so much, that wasn't honorable, and to a person he was proud of. I ended up taking an internship, manifesting and believing in myself so strongly that I spoke to other women in the community, just like the person that helped change my life. And I found myself just doing it outside of the organization. But I was able to fight through a fear of speaking, gaining confidence, a fear of performing, singing, believing in myself where I thought I would never, ever be able to speak like this. And, without shaking and feeling like my heart was gonna just explode. And it's an amazing feeling to be here and be present. I don't feel like the 10 years was lost, because what I gained was way more valuable. And I just feel like it was worth it for me to go through the process, because I found, the solution. And everybody has a different solution for their problems. And in this way, I was only able to get help from somebody that helped themselves. And it created something for me that made sense, because nothing else did. And for other people, they might be able to, go to programs or just quit cold turkey. But at the end of the day, you have to heal the root, get to the root of that problem. Every problem that I had, even to this day, because it's never gonna change, it's you're always growing. I figure a problem out, and I figure it out because I tap into the root of it. I go to what's really causing this, the cause and effect, and it definitely goes back to inner child, youth. And fixing and healing that inner child is very important to me. The inner child is an alcoholic. She's not promiscuous. She's a loving mother. She's a phenomenal person. She's trustworthy. She's honest. And I'm just so grateful to be here to tell you, You know, I healed my relationship with not just my dad. He passed from COVID-19 last year, and I'm just so blessed to have made the strides to get to where I'm going, because I'm not a millionaire. You know, I became a chef and I am very stable. Those are the little things I'm proud of. I'm working to become a homeowner, and even more prouder about just being very loyal and just very authentic.